clear my throat a little bit. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender at Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter, and it's Wednesday, September 14th, and we'll be taking a first look at the NFL, the main slate, NFL coming up week 2, Sunday, and taking your questions from the YouTube chat. As always, if you got questions, I got answers. If you got strategy questions, DFS stuff. I've been in a decent mood this week. I've even been answering stupid questions. Oh my God, what has gotten into me? I've been in a good mood, right? I found out yesterday. I went to see my accountant. I filed an extension on my taxes. Okay, so I have a business as well as my own personal taxes. Okay, and recently over the past 2 years, I've converted like my DFS stuff. Like I used to have a digital marketing business, and I converted that all to like everything goes through my business. And then I also pay, then I pay myself as an employee type of thing. And then I've never filed an extension before. Okay, so like I had to wait on some stuff for business taxes purposes. So I filed an extension. I was like, okay, I need to file an extension for my personal taxes because I don't even know like there's K1 stuff, there's fancy tax stuff that I wouldn't have known, and I wouldn't have known how much I would need to pay. So I filed an extension for my personal taxes. So, okay, so that doesn't need to be filed till October 15th. My business one's September 15th. So that can come up immediately, right? So I went to my accountant, so I get all my tax stuff, and then I could file my personal taxes. And whenever you file an extension, realize that's not an extension on your payment, right? You still got to pay on time, right? So, but you may not know exactly how much it is, so you estimate, right? So I'll pay something. I'll probably pay a little bit more than needed just to make sure, so I don't get the interest and penalties or anything involved, which probably isn't that much, but wanted to play it safe. So I just based on how I normally do my personal taxes, I just estimate it's about 25%, I guess. I'll give them 25% federal, 25%. So I sent them 25%, whatever my adjusted gross income, I just sent it to them on the extension. But I didn't realize until I got my business taxes back that since I pay myself as an employee, like a lot of those taxes are already being withheld, right? I'm already paying that on a quarterly basis anyway. So my estimate was completely wrong, right? So it's like, okay, I think I owe this much, just take it, right? And so it turns out that grossly overpaid by like $16,000. So found out yesterday, hey, you're getting $16,000 back from the government. You just gave them too much. I don't know why. Your estimate was off. You gave them too much. Okay. So it's almost like I won a GPP yesterday. I thought that was gone, right? As well as my withholdings and all that type of stuff. So I'm in a good mood. When am I going to see that money? Who the hell knows? They say it's 7 to 14 days or something, direct deposit. I don't know. But it felt like I won like $16,000. Just showed up. Oh, I didn't realize I had this. So give me a thumb for that. Give thumb for. Well, I mean, I guess it didn't change anything. Just I should have only paid X amount back in April, whatever. But whatever. Give me the thumbs. Give me the good mornings. Wataz, Suki Singh, Doug Montgomery, Jay Brown, 764, Bart B, GM. Yeah, I don't know the G. That's the NFT crypto stuff. I don't deal with that shit. GM with the coffee cup. I don't deal with any of that stuff. Right? We're not going to talk about rainmakers or anything. But I will answer your questions. Right? I mean, we're in pretty much NFL mode all the time. So you got questions, I got answers. I'm going to take the first look at the slate for Sunday, running it through some of the tools that we just released. Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. We just released this a little over 2 weeks ago. It's my advanced course. Okay, so if you've been playing regularly and you want a systematic, repeatable, time-efficient process to analyze slates effectively and consistently build lineups that show a long-term profit, it's a 10-chapter audio course, and it comes with Excel tools. Mostly for Draftkings, right? Because we could download the CSVs and stuff, but you could kind of jury-rig them for FanDuel. I think James has done some of that work to possibly work for FanDuel as well, because their formatting is a little bit different. But I will be taking a first look using the tools from the course, which are the tools that I use. Okay, James essentially built tools for me to improve my and accuracy and the efficiency of my process So that's what I use. I used it last Sunday. I used it for Showdown. I use it for everything now, right? It gets me like a process that would normally take me 40 minutes now takes me 12 minutes, right? It really dramatically speeds it up. So I'll be showing some stuff off looking at Sunday slate today. Jason Hull, how did you do on the Monday slate? No, I did. The first half was good. When Geno Smith was cooking, it was good in the first half, but then the Broncos did a whole bunch of damage. So no, did not end up doing well. In the beginning, I thought I was going to do great, but no, ended up no. That Judy 67-yard touchdown, that spelled the end, and I started just going down and down as the Seahawks couldn't really do anything in the second half. Oh, let's see. Grant Brown, if you pay taxes, are you in the top 1%? Probably, right? I gotta pay taxes on my winnings. Got to pay taxes on, obviously course sales and working here at RotoGrinders as an independent contractor. I got income coming in. JWH, do you play showdown slates for NFL? Yes. Maybe not all. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not like the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, like the smaller ones. The island game ones I primarily play. Sunday night football, Monday night football, Thursday night football. If so, do you play only the large showdown slates or okay? You can play all the showdown slates, each game to minimize the impact and variance. You can. You can play all the slates. If you have an edge, just play as all the slates, every slate possible. The only problem is I'm only one person, right? It's hard to do that effectively, right? Multiple sites, all the slates, every day, the 2-game MLB Turbo slate, the night slate for NBA while NFL is going on. Like I'm only one person. I can't do it all. But yes, you can do it. Understand that the smaller showdown slates on Sunday are just the top prizes. The prize pools are smaller. If you're playing like cash game type of stuff, 3-mans, yeah, why not? If you can get it done, if you believe that the time is worth putting into it, rather than putting the time into something else, right? I have so much more money on the main slate on Sundays that's where my priority goes. I instead of making 4 p.m. Showdown slate lineups, I'm doing a late swap stuff. So like, which is the priority? I'm only one person. But yes, in theory, you should be playing as many of the slates as possible if you have an edge. And most people, and especially recreational players, will play the Sunday slate. So let's take a look at the Sunday slate. And most people do a first look by going, oh, let's take a look at the plays. But you know me, I don't do picks and plays. I don't do plays here. These are just names on a spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build 300 lineups. Okay? So I'm going to build 300 lineups here. And I'm going to build, this is for GPPs. So we can get some stacks, right? Maybe a little bit of diversity. Limit this to 1. So let's just build very, very basic, like 1 plus 1 with a run back type of stacks, right? Doesn't even matter. Running backs, I don't care. That's fine. So 1 quarterback, 1 wide receiver or tight end, and 1. Do we even tight ends? How many good tight ends do we even have in the pool? Pitts, Hawkinson, Akui Boone, not many. Not many of them. So let's keep the stacks to wide receivers only. Just getting a small subsection of the types of lineups. If people were using the RG projections, which are pretty good projections, right? Of course, these are the Wednesday projections. They'll get better and better throughout the week, right? We got initial ownership. This isn't like completely, the most accurate. By Friday, by Saturday, it'll be much better. And then just see, like, okay, well, a 1 plus 1, a 2 plus 1. It's very, very, very simple style of lineup. And let's put just a tad, maybe a tad bit of diversity, just a unique players 2. And let's make sure most people will spend like most of their salary, right? 49.5, right? Just to take a look at what shows up, right? Probably people don't play double tight end, right? Let's put in, 50-50 here so we just don't get double tight ends. Right? Not because we can't play double tight ends, just that I'm trying to see what other people will do with these projections. And then see, okay, we got everything here. Let's see what stacks show up. Let's see what players show up. We don't have to go through the player pool. You just build 300 lineups and see. Right? I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of Bengals defense. Probably going to see tight end doesn't look all that great. We'll probably see Devontae, Amon-Ra, Marquise Brown. T. Higgins is questionable. So that may change, right? Obviously. He's in the concussion protocol. Look, the running backs, we'll probably see Barkley, Fournette, McCaffrey, Mixon, Henderson, Taylor, Swift. Okay, that makes sense. Should see a bunch of that. And the stack, we should see Carr, Adams, Stafford, Cup. We got like Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe a little bit more. But we'll see. I'll build 300 lineups, and we'll put this in the portfolio correlation matrix. Right. So this will take a couple of minutes. So if you got any questions, got thumbs ups in the chat, give me a like, give me a subscribe. We got tons of stuff on the channel. Later today, I'll be on MLB Grinders Live later today at 5 o'clock. So over the MLB slate, which do I even know who's playing? No, but I'll just use the projections, see what happens. I'll be on later. There's other NFL shows coming up this week. Jazzy J returns. No. Jazzy J, you're very new to the show. You need MLB picks. Best thing to do is to maybe watch MLB Grinders Live later today on RotoGrinders. I don't do any picks anyway. My suggestion would be to subscribe to RotoGrinders Premium, Combo Premium, and look at our projections. Right? So I could go right now. Right? You want home runs? I mean, I'll go to the bat. Right? So I'm going to go to the bat, which are Derek Hardy's projection system. Right? I'm going to go to the standard projections. Like I said, I have no idea who's playing tonight. I have no idea who's pitching. I have no idea who's in the starting lineups. Because remember, DFS is not about that at all. Well, Jesse J doesn't want projections. Well, then maybe you're watching the wrong show. And maybe you could be nicer to other people in chat. So I get rid of them. See, this is the 95% of people. Haven't I told you that? 95% of people that claim they want to learn, they don't want to learn. They reinforce their own worldviews. So bye-bye. Especially if you're gonna tell someone else and tell someone that's actually better than them in the chat, other users that actually do well in DFS, to go get bent. Right, JWH says, go look at the Vegas odds for home runs if that's what you want. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Now, it's fine. Fine. My audience knows that predicting, like, what's the most probable is not necessarily the most profitable. So who cares? Right? I could go on the bat and go, okay, Aaron Judge yesterday. Okay. It's not that hard. Right? Go look at home run props. I can go to Scores and Odds right now. Right? Go to Scores and Odds. Right? Our sister site. I'll look at the props. Right? Go look at the props. Let's see. We got home runs. Can we sort this? Aaron Judge. I think our best odds. I think it's sorted by that. We got it's maybe not completely, but close enough. Right? We go to Aaron Judge. There's my home run pick. Aaron Judge by a lot more than some other players. Right? Pete Alonso, Mike Trout, Luke Voigt. So, like, what am I doing? All I'm doing is reading a site to you. Doesn't seem that useful of an amount of time when you could just go to scoresandodds.com/MLB/props. You don't even have to pay for this. You may have to pay for the RG projection in there, but you just look plus 235. There you go, Aaron Judge. Yeah, but what happens if he's $12,000 on Draftkings? Well, that may not be the best value. So there you go. JWA says, but Blender, don't you have to have a home run from every single hitter, or maybe even your pitcher, to win a GBP? Oh yeah, you gotta, right? You gotta home run hunt. No, you don't. Pick the team that scores the most runs. You get 5 hitters from that team, or 4 on FanDuel, you probably did well. Okay, we're up to 220. Also, there's Champions League soccer. If you want any questions about Champions League soccer this afternoon, feel free. I could have done so much better yesterday if it wasn't for Porto just like completely crapping the bed. And then Diaby scoring, even though that was good for someone else that I know. Diaby didn't score for Leverkusen. That was Demirbay. I would have won a king of the pitch ticket. But no, it couldn't happen. It had to be Diaby. But yes, if you have soccer questions for today, feel free. I mean, soccer is my if you want to call it my primary sport, my bread and butter. So I play nearly all EPL and Champions League slates. And I used to, before I expanded to other sports, play all the interleagues, all the everything. I just played soccer DFS. JWA asks, median projections for soccer are essentially useless given the variance, right? They're not useless. You just have to understand the context. The difference, the distributional differences between players can be dramatic. Okay, so you have to know what type of player they are. So, for instance, I'm looking at our RG projections for Champions League, which obviously just assumes projected lineups. I mean, we don't know until we're not going to know until what, like 1:45, 2 o'clock Eastern, what the actual starting lineups are. So, like a median projection for Tony Cruz is a much more normal distribution. Why? Well, he's a central midfielder that gets most of the peripheral points from free kicks and corner kicks. He takes a lot of set pieces, right? So set piece takers have a much more normal distribution of their projection, right? But you take someone like Kasper Dolberg, for instance, right, on Sevilla, if he starts, like 9.42 for 4,400 sounds good. It's like, wow, okay, that's 2.14x. Like Kasper Dolberg rarely scores 9 points. He's a center forward. So he's either going to score 2 or 3, or he's going to score 14 or 15, right? The median, right? The middle is 9, but it's not a normal distribution. It's more bimodal. So if you're plugging him in, like thinking that, like, oh yeah, I'm going to lock in like 8 or 9 points, it's like he rarely scores 8 or 9 points. He's going to score one or the other. So if you're playing cash games, it's like, I don't know, 4.4 gets for someone that could easily just get 0 or 1 or something, but he could also get 15. Right? So you take a look at those. So knowing what the players are, like Lionel Messi, like comparison these PSG forwards. When we take a look, because you have 3 to choose from, right? You have Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe, and they're all expensive. And of course, they're your humongous favorite heading over to Maccabi Haifa in Israel. I mean, obviously, they're 3 of the best players in the world. So it's like, well, looking at their projections, it's like, okay, what's really the big difference between them? Well, Lionel Messi's projection is going to be much more normal than Neymar and Mbappe's. Neymar is going to be slightly more normal than Mbappe, based on how the players play. Messi takes most of their set pieces, most of their corner kicks, which means they rack up. He has much more normal distribution of peripherals. Neymar gets fouled a lot more. He has the ball at his feet a lot more. So he is slightly more, and he plays wide. So he'll cross the ball more. He'll get draw fouls more, right? Really doesn't take any set pieces anymore. So his distribution is more normal than Mbappe, but not as normal as Messi. And Mbappe's is not normal at all. Mbappe is completely bimodal because he's playing centrally, and it's like he could have 3 or 4 shots, right? Especially in this game. But this median is really based around like goals and assists more than anything else. So you take a look and you go, like, which one would you play in cash games over one another? Well, you play Messi. If they were all the same price and all the same projection, Messi would have a more normal distribution. So that's the only difference. You could still use these. You could still use mean or median projections. You just have to know that the standard deviations for different players are going to be dramatically different. Knowing the game, like set piece takers are typically like cash game type of staples because they have more normal distributions. And then guys that have really bimodal distributions are almost purely GPP plays. Like I wouldn't play Mbappe in cash today, even though, he's one of the best odds to score a goal. I think Haaland actually has the best odds to score a goal. He's at 11.6 against Dortmund at home. But this 21.46, you can't treat that like a basketball projection, right? You saw a basketball projection like that, and you're like, okay, that's a nice normal distribution. Like Haaland ain't normal, right? He's a center forward. He's not. He may take a couple more shots this game than unusual, but like someone like Phil Foden at 8,500 at 16.74, his distribution is more normal, right? It's not that normal, but it's more normal. So, like, you have to understand that with Haaland, you could easily just get 4 points. You could also get 40 right? He could score 3 goals with 1 assist and 7 shots. I mean, it could be that. So that's the only difference. You could use soccer projections. Just you probably have to know a little bit more about the game of soccer just to know what type of players and what the formations are. But in general, wide in DraftKings pricing, wide players and set piece takers are typically like this more of a floor because you get points for crosses and fouls drawn and stuff like that, and that's more likely to happen on the outside than on the inside. And center forwards typically have the best chance of scoring goals, but also don't put up that many peripheral points. And the same thing for like defensive midfielders and center backs. So in defense, center backs, other than the clean sheet equity is like half of their score. And defensive midfielders typically aren't close enough to goal that a defensive midfielder, unless they have set pieces, right? Unless they're taking some corners, typically don't have the greatest goal scoring chances. So their project, oh, he's 6-point projection. Well, that seems pretty good for a defensive midfielder. It's like, yeah, but like they rarely put up 20 points because they may score one goal the entire season. And they may have like a grand total of 8 shots for the entire season. So outside of those peripheral points, there's really no upside in many of them. So that's the difference, knowing that. How each team kind of plays. And obviously, depending on how big of a favorite they are, how much they're more likely to cross the ball than to go up the middle. I mean, I find soccer, while projections can be useful, they're definitely useful. Knowing a little bit more about the game does provide context to the projections. JWH says, so is it worthwhile to create base projections that calculate a projection solely based on crosses, shots, and shots on goal? Yeah, well, you could do that, and then if you want to take in the anytime goal scoring odds or something like that, and use that as the points for goals. So if someone has anytime goal scoring odds of plus 100, you'd count that as like 5 points, right? You probably have to bump it up because they could score 2. Right, because plus 100 would be 50% chance of scoring a goal at any point during the game, right? And a goal is worth 10 points. You're not counting because you're already counting the shot and the shot on goal of the goal, so you'd add 5 points to that as the median. But yeah, for like cash games and stuff like that, sometimes unless there's a forward that has like insane goal scoring odds, minus 300, minus 400 type of stuff. You're primarily building cash lineups in soccer that, like, let me act as if every game is 0-0 and no goals are scored. How do I score the most points then? Grant Brown says the biggest soccer question, can we get a decent contest? Yeah, they're horrible. I mean, they run with good top. Like, you could win 10,000 of first place. It's just that the payout structure is like it's so top heavy. 10,000 of first and like 500 to 7th. Like it's really bad. Even some of the small field ones, the 333 they run sometimes, they run it, but sometimes it's like 33% to first place, and just like, ugh. I mean, this is the main reason why. I mean, I'm primarily a soccer cash game player. I'll play the qualifiers, the king of the pitch. I'll play the $44 contest. Yeah, I do play the 222 or the whatever 180, the scorpion kick or something, but only when the payout structure is good. On Saturdays, a lot of times it's better than on the Champions League days. JWH, for one-sided prop odds, say winning a golf tournament or goal scorer where you can't bet not winning or not scoring, do you worry that the odds may be extra juiced? Then reduce it based on that. Yeah, of course, they're probably extra juiced. That's not the actual probabilities. But if you want to say, okay, let's 15 cents or something, build odds as if that they would build odds as if they were 40-cent spread, and find out what's the no vig odds of the anytime goal scoring odds. You could do something like that. All I'm saying is that you use it to some extent. So you don't say it's 5 points. You say it's 4.2 points. I mean, whatever. You could just use that to represent, their median in goals. Okay, are we done with the NFL? Okay, good. 300 lineups. Okay, so like I said, I built 300 lineups with a very simple stack configuration of a 2+1. So I'm going to export this, right? Because I'm trying to figure out, as of right now on Wednesday, what do chalky lineups look like? If you use the RG projections, which are decently representative of the rest of the industry, I could think at this point, right? So I'm gonna export this. I'm gonna open this up. I'm gonna open it up in Excel, and I'll switch over and show you. Remove this. Stop screen. Let me share my screen. I'll share my entire screen 3. It may be very small, but there. So here you go. I'm going to put it into here, the portfolio, because I have 2 screens, because I'm showing 2 different things. Okay, so I cleared the lineups out here. This is part of the theory at DFS.com, right? The advanced course. So I'm going to cut and paste. I exported these. Copy. I'm going to cut and paste them right here. Right, so here's all the 300 lineups right here. I'm going to load the lineups into the portfolio assessment. So it could show me what players stick to other players more than other players, right? What combinations. And this may take a minute. So it's a little bit of a diverse for 300 lineups. This may take a minute. But I'm always here to answer your questions. Give me those thummy thumbs. You know I like them. And of course, you could get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players, 10 chapters of audio, and these Excel tools that James McCool has built by hand from the ground up that, let me be clear, I am currently using. You use RotoGrinders Lineup HQ and the projections and the ownership and these tools. This is how I built my lineups on Sunday, built my showdown lineups on Thursday, Sunday, Monday. It just speeds up my natural, like I would do this type of stuff manually, and it would take a much longer time. So now it's kind of a little bit more automated. So I'm still waiting on this. Because what it's doing is comparing every player in the pool to every other player in the pool to come up with an R value of how many times one player correlates to the other player in a lineup. Not correlates in game performance, just in a lineup. How often is Matthew Stafford and Saquon Barkley in the same lineup? How often is Leonard Fournette and Michael Pittman in the same lineup? So it has to go through every lineup and go ding, 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 and does all that. So the more diverse, the more lineups you put in and the more diverse your lineup portfolio is, the longer it'll take. It typically takes a minute or 2. That's when we wait on it. Now, it's not going to show anything that like we couldn't figure out by necessarily the main things of like I could take a look at just the exposure, what it ends up. Like out of these 300 lineups, I'm getting 90% Saquon Barkley, 79% Leonard Fournette, 78% Bengals, 65% Derek Carr. So these are a lot. There's a lot of Raiders stacks. Marquise Brown, 46%. Darrell Henderson, 43%. Hunter Renfrow, 40%. Pitts, 39. Nico Collins, 38. Interesting. Devontae Adams, Hawkinson, Higgins, Dortch, Allen Robinson. Uh-oh. So I can see, I'm more likely to see that the top correlated players are Barkley, Fournette, Barkley, Bengals, Fournette, Bengals, Carr, and everyone, I guess. And then not as so much on Marquise Brown, Darrell Henderson, Renfrow, Pitts, Collins, but they'll be high up there. But it looks like based on these, like Joe Mixon is that kind of like that odd man out, 19% in this 300 build. Okay, yeah, we got it done. There we go. So you can see here, Barkley, what this will do, this portfolio correlation matrix will do, it'll give you the matrix, right? So the R values of every player to every other player. So obviously 1 means they're correlated in all lineups, right? But this is hard to read, right? You can go through and read this matrix, but we give you kind of a list of all of them right down here on the side. So the R value of Barkley and the Bengals is 0.81. So out of 300 lineups, they're in 108 total lineups, 36% of your entire portfolio. So here are the top correlations. In a lineup portfolio, if you were to play like the chalkiest lineups out of lineup HQ and the RotoGrinders projections as of now. You get a lot of Barkley, Bengals, Fournette, right? We just start looking up here. Bengals, Fournette, Carr, Barkley, Carr, Bengals, like Marquise Brown, Bengals, Barkley, Brown, right? You start looking over here. Then in the middle, we have, you can see a variance factor of how much of the portfolio has the certain combinations of players. So typically, the higher the variance factor means the more that your portfolio relies on that player as a whole, right? How much equity your whole portfolio has in that player. So Barkley, Bengals, Fournette, Carr, Brown, Pitts. So we could look here, like I said, with Mixon. Like Mixon doesn't show up as nearly as high, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown even doesn't show up as high. Allen Robinson actually shows up higher than him because of the Ram stacks. Nico Collins shows up higher based on their current projections. Probably if you bump Collins down by a half a point, it doesn't show up as much. But you could use this to go, okay, what lineups do I not make? Maybe I don't make Barkley, Fournette, Bengals lineups. That's what it looks like right here. Looks like maybe only play one of the three. So you could still play some of the chalky other players, but you're not playing the chalky combinations of players. And then certain players that you thought may have been, like Amon-Ra St. Brown was like the third wide receiver value, but he doesn't seem to be as, he's in a lot of Barkley and Fournette and Bengals lineups, but not as many as I would have thought. So maybe he's someone that you keep out of that group, right? So you could run lineups like this all you want and plug them into this tool. You can plug your own portfolio to see what connections you have between lineups, and if you're too diverse or not as diverse as you want to be. And you can also run with different projection sets. You could run this with different lineup combinations. I want to run all the Matthew Stafford lineups, 300 Matthew Stafford lineups, and see what players, based on these projections or an aggregate of projections, players stick in Stafford lineups. And then know that in my Ram stacks, to maybe don't play as much of X or play more of this other person that doesn't seem, that because of price and position, doesn't seem to get into a lot of those types of lineups. Understanding that the field, your opponents that you're playing against, probably are building those lineups, right? Because they're either trying to play the best plays too much, right? Their ownership is way too high, or they're using an optimizer and they don't know what they're doing, right? Which a lot of people do. Trust me. I'd say 90% of people that use lineup HQ don't know what they're doing. Now, is it better than what they were doing before? Maybe. But a lot of times they're getting a lot of clumping. They're using they're forcing in things too much and using exposures that don't make mathematical sense, right? They're either getting too much diversity or too little diversity. So their lineup sets look weird. Their exposures look fine, but their lineups don't. So it's not a matter of exposure. People go by, I want twice as much of this, I want 10% of that, and not realizing that just because your exposures look like that doesn't mean your lineups are good. Me and you, right? I could make the same lineups. I could show you, I could make 100 lineups that have X exposure to each player, whatever, and my lineups be very good. And then you could have literally the same exact exposure on players, and your lineups are horrible. So that's the caveat that people make the mistake in lineup HQ or other optimizers of saying, well, I just want 20% of Marquise Brown. As long as I get 20% of Marquise Brown, why do I have to look at the lineups? It's like, yeah, because those lineups could be horrible. Yeah, you have 20% of Marquise Brown, but he's in lineups with 5% of this and 1% of that. And he's in all of your Marquise Brown lineups have the Lions defense. And yeah, but I only have the Lions in like 6% of my line. Yeah, but it's in all the Marquise Brown lineups. You didn't look. Maybe you didn't want that. Maybe that's fine. But do you know? No, you're just guiding everything based on exposures and nothing else. Grant Brown says, I ran out of time on Sunday and rushed with lineup HQ. Any reason you couldn't do this for the industry on Saturday and then run a final version with the aggregate Sunday morning? I mean, you can. It depends on if you're waiting for an act. You could have done this past week, right? Because what inactives are we really waiting on? Nothing, right? So like I don't necessarily need the 11:30 a.m., which it takes 15, 20 minutes for all the sites to update. Like, you don't need that. Now, if there's this type of thing where it's like, we don't know if this guy is playing, and if this guy is playing, he's a great play, he's a great projection, or if this guy isn't playing, it makes these other two people great projections, then you may need to wait. But I would have no problem getting an aggregate and doing it Saturday night. I mean, you could do this Sunday morning. I mean, I did it Sunday morning, but I started at like 10 o'clock, right? 10 o'clock, I put everything in, and then I started making all my groups. Then I was good for a while. Then I waited till 11:30 to just make sure they enact this before I started building lineups, and everything was good. But my correlations, the matrix was perfectly fine. So now let's say we take these lineups, right? So these are like kind of like maybe the chalkiest types of lineups based on the RG projections right now. But I could also go in and see that based on the ownership of some of these lineups, which ones are maybe possibly plus EV, even though they are chalky. I could do that in the portfolio trimmer. Okay, so what you could do here in the portfolio trimmer, you could see the matrix is on the other. I meant just so I could split the screen. Right, so here, so you could plug in the projections. So I could go to Lineup HQ and download the projections directly from Lineup HQ. Right, so I open that up in Excel. Right, so you can see here. I'm going to put it on the screen. So I have a second window because I have multiple screens in front of me. Right, so I have right here. Right, so these are the projections from Lineup HQ. Right, from whatever you're looking at. If you're aggregating, if you're looking at different stuff, you can just download whatever it is. You get all the columns. We don't even need all the columns. Right, for this, I'm going to copy A to G, right, to get the player ID through projected ownership, right? I need the ceiling and the floor. I don't necessarily need it, but yes, that would be useful. Copy those columns, right? Paste them in right there, right? And I need the salary right there, right? So I copy column O there, plug that in right over there, right? So the projections are there. So there, we got the projections in. Now I can take those lineups that we had from the portfolio correlation matrix, right? Or from Lineup HQ. I mean, I have the export file. But I could take all these lineups, copy and paste these, copy, and I go to this other sheet as part of the portfolio trimmer tool. This is plug them in right here, right? And I'm going to load it in the portfolio manager. So what this is going to do right now, what this shows is all the lineups sorted by projection, right? So it's sorted right here. You can see by projection. It also shows you the price of the lineup, right? 50,000, 49.9, everything. The floor projection, sum, the median sum, the ceiling sum, and the ownership sum, right? So you can see here that's like, okay, this lineup projects a little bit lower, but this one's a little bit, this one's a little higher owned, right? I can set thresholds to trim any of this by, right? So I can put 100, whatever, right? So if I wanted to cut out in this line, I mean, we take a look at the bottom. Like here's a lineup that projects for 135 as a median. I mean, it's lower ownership. 135. Okay. So that's not, these lineups are very chalky, right? So the 300th lineup is still projecting at 135, even though the top one is 139. Okay. So these are really chalky. These are really the top end of lineups. And even the ownership, even if we sort by ownership right here, right? These are very owned lineups as well, right? But we get rid of some. Maybe there are some in here. Let's go by projection. Descending again. Right? Maybe we want to trim some of these lineups. Maybe are there some lineups that are that spend too little that maybe we get rid of? I don't know. So let's say we wanted to get rid of lineups that didn't like we only want 49.8 line. I'm just giving an example, right? So I guess put that in as 49.8 in there here, and I could just go trim thresholds. It'll go down, and you got rid of the lineups that are under 49.8. So we got rid of the 49.7 lineups, right? You could do that for the projection, right? If we wanted to get rid of, let's say we want to get rid of all the lineups that are under 137. I could do that right here. I could just type in 137, trim thresholds. It'll go through. Give it a second. Obviously, the more lineups you have in, the longer it takes. So there you go. Done. High is 137. Oh, no. Oh, I set the high as 137. Oh, okay. So now it's giving me all the lineups that have the highest as 137. So that wasn't the min. Right? I did the opposite. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. So what do? Do I have to recut and paste? No, I can just reload the portfolio one. Yeah, now all the lineups are back. All the lineups that you inserted in here always stay here. So if you make a mistake or anything like that, you could just do this. Now, I've shown this in Lineup HQ, where in general, as a general rule, lineups, you want to play lineups that have the highest projection for the lowest ownership, right? So if you have a lineup that is projected at 140 and is 140% owned, and there's a lineup that's at 135 projection and it's 150% owned, like why would you play a lineup if you had a choice between the two lineups of playing a lineup that's 5 points lower projected and higher owned, right? So as you go down in projection, you should also be going down in ownership, in theory. Well, with this portfolio trimmer tool, we've included a way to do that automatically, calling Smart Trim. I used to show this in Lineup HQ by doing it manually. So let me show you manually. Let me share my Lineup HQ. So we could go into Lineup HQ like this and go, okay, this is sorted by median projection. So this projection is 139.6. This one is 139.47. So this is all it's sorted by top projection. So as we go down, the ownership should go down also. So this one is 121.86. This one is 119. This one is 146. So like, why would you play a lineup that is so much more owned than this lineup based on our current projected ownership, but is projected slightly lower? You wouldn't, right? So I'm obviously not playing 300 lineups. Maybe I'm only playing 20 lineups. Maybe I'm only playing 150. Maybe I'm only playing 3. Who knows? But if I given a choice, I probably would play this first lineup over the second lineup. And because of that, I'm going to eliminate this lineup. Right? So this one is 109. So that's good. So as we go down, the ownership should go down. This is 131. This is too high owned. Right? We get rid of it. This one is slightly higher owned. So we try to beat 109.72. So you go through all this. 126. That's way too high. 124. Like the lineup above it is better. So you could go through and you could do this manually. This is 300 lineups. You know how long it takes to do it manually? 5 to 10 minutes if you wanted to do it this way. Imagine you have like 5 builds of 300 and you kind of compare the two. This could take a long time. Well, that's why we've created at thetheoryofdfs.com let me get the entire screen. A portfolio trimmer that has that function in it if you wanted to do that in mass. Right? You could also do it by stack. You don't have to put all of your lineups in here, all of your potential lineups in here. You could put, I'm going to build 100 Stafford lineups and then Smart Trim. I'm going to build 100 Jared Goff lineups and then Smart Trim. You could do something like that. You don't have to put them all in. But I could just click Smart Trim, and that process of eliminating the lineups based on projection versus ownership, so that as the projection goes down, the ownership also goes down, I could just press that one button, Smart Trim. Let it do its work. It'll take a minute. Strawface 23. Would you do this exercise for small field entries as well? Yes, that is what I do. Contests that are 500, 1,000 entries and either single entry or 3-max type contests? Yeah, why not? Remember, you could build, for those contests, you could build 5,000 lineups that are about the same from an expected value standpoint. So how do you choose which ones to play? I choose the ones that have the highest projection for the lowest ownership. So like you could use these tools. I use these tools to make my small field lineups, right? Let me see what these look like. Let me see what those look like. Let me see what these combinations look like. And now I have something to compare everything to each other. So in baseball, do I play 5-3? Do I play a 5-1? Do I play a 4-4? I just build all the combinations and I have them all mixed together. And then if it just so happens I'm playing a 4-3-1-1 or whatever, then that's so be it. So look, so I did the Smart Trim based on this, and I got down to just these lineups. That's it. All 300 came down to this. So as it went down, right? Because the projection difference isn't that dramatic in these 300. We're building the chalkiest lineups based on projections. So you can see that these are Fournette, Barkley, Devontae Adams in the flex. They have a lot of Nico Collins in them. You start bumping that projection down a little, maybe it doesn't come up as much. So maybe if you were to play a combination of Fournette, Barkley, Bengals, maybe these are the lineups that are more. Obviously, they have T. Higgins in it. We don't know if he's going to play. But you could do that with any portfolio. And remember, you could just always bring it back by reloading the portfolio and you get all your lineups back. So if you wanted to eliminate some and then do that, that's fine. If you want to have different projections, sort the numbers. Like I'm going to do a smart trim for all of my lineups that project between 135 and 140. And then do a smart trim for ones that are between 130 and 135 or certain ownership ranges. Right? So you're not forcing in very similar players when you do smart trim. You could do them by band. I talk about that in the course. By bands of risk. Say, well, I don't want all chalky lineups, but I also don't want all like really contrarian lineups. So maybe you use this portfolio trimmer to go, okay, let me build a set of 300 chalky lineups. Chalkier, like higher ownership sum lineups. And you do it in different bands. Maybe you build 100 at the 130 to 140 band. You build 100 from the 120 to 130 band. You'll build 100 from 110 to 120. You build 100 from 100 to 110. And then you end up with like 1,000 lineups in each band. And then maybe you trim each band. You trim each band, and then maybe you put them all together, and then you trim it from there. And something like that. And maybe, hey, if you're only playing 3 lineups, maybe you could get down to 3 lineups. You started with 1,000, and now you're down to 3 lineups. Or you're down to 14 lineups, and then you could just pick and choose. I got 14 lineups to choose from. Which 3 do I like the best? In whatever way you consider liking. You could do that. If you're playing 20 lineups, maybe you get it down to 58 lineups. You're like, okay, here are my 58 candidates. Which 20 do I pick? And then you can just pick based on risk tolerance. Just be like, okay, I'll pick a couple of these stacks, a couple of those stacks. I don't want to have all the Derek Carr, so I'm going to get rid of this one. And there you go. It allows you to build a whole ton of potential lineups and then trim that down to candidate lineups. Then from those candidates, select the ones that you're going to play based on some type of metric of want to play the highest projection for the lowest ownership. Gives you some type of thing there. Rather than try to do that in lineup HQ and end up with tons of clumps and you're screwing with exposures when you shouldn't be. None of what I did has anything to do with exposures. The lineups are the lineups. I'm looking for the highest EV lineups I can. For the lowest risk possible. Because let's say you smart trim everything. Let's say we did that. We did all 300. You could also bring this back into the portfolio correlation matrix and see if you have too much of one person if you want. I mean, obviously, we got it down to like 7. Okay. So now we're down to this. Okay. These are all the chalky lineups. I'm not even saying that these are the lineups I would even consider playing anyway, because they have too many chalky combinations of players. So we're down to what? These are 8 lineups. Well, I got another tool for you. So let's say you're only playing like maybe you're only playing 3 max or something. Well, we also have a lineup simulator. I'll bring that up. Move this over here. So you see it's loading up. Okay. We're gonna have to put in. I could put in the projections, the ceiling and the floor, and it could do 2,500 simulations. So we could see here, right here. I'm gonna bring it up all the way down. Okay. So we're going to clear the projections here, right? I'm going to just go right in to our other tool that exists, right? Because the projections are right there, right? Player ID, right? I just copy A to N, right? That should be right. Copy A to N, paste that right here. So I got the projections there. I could put in these lineups, clear the lineups. We're not on DK Showdown, we're on regular. So I'm taking the lineups from the portfolio trimmer, right? We're down to these lineups right here. I'm going to take these lineups. There are 8 lineups. Put them in right there. Then based on those projections, there you go. It's simulated. Right? Using the floor and ceiling projections, you get a simulation. You can see in the middle of the screen of lineup 1 to lineup 8. Now, obviously, the ones that have the highest median projection are more likely to win in comparison. Win compared to each other, not win the contest. But if you refresh this and you go, okay, randomness is on 50, and you're like, okay, well, this lineup 6, maybe you have a slightly higher ceiling. It comes out a little bit higher than these. And maybe you get rid of them. Right? You go, okay, I want 3 lineups. It seems like the top 2 are good. Right? Against each other. Right? Because obviously they have the higher median. So you have Stafford, Fournette, Barkley, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. This one has Tyreek Hill in it. So what do you got? You got a 2v2 or something. Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow. Right? You got something. So maybe you want the top 2. So you don't mind the top 2. So you're going to take the top 2. So it's like, okay, I'm going to play the top 2. Then let me take one that's lower down. So I'm going to get rid of the, maybe you cut and paste these out and put them in your Draftkings file. I'm just going to clear these out. So we already decided on them. So I clear those out. I'm going to clear contents, clear contents. So now we're left with the other lineups. We go in here and we can run those, right? Just to get a sense of like how close these lineups are to each other, right? We could even add more randomness, right? So we see here that lineup 3, 4, 5, and 6 are really not all that different. Lineup 7 and 8, maybe a little too low in projections. So maybe we get rid of those, the bottom 2 lineups. Clear contents. Okay. So you got 4 lineups left, and maybe you want to choose one. Maybe you only wanted to choose one of the top 2. So you already got one of those. Right? So you pick one of those, and now you go back and like, yeah, these lineups are not all that different from each other. Like they're slightly 3 is maybe very slightly better. So maybe you say, I'm going to take lineup 3 and then one of lineup 4, 5, or 6. And then depending on what players are in it, you go, okay, well, how much TJ Hawkinson do I want? Right. But this is a little quick way of seeing like how close the lineups are to each other as far as performance is concerned, based on the floor and the ceiling. And you may find that there's some lineups that have a slightly higher median, but one lineup has a higher ceiling and actually wins a little bit more often. A little bit more. So you can run these every time you press this button, you're running 2,500 simulations. Right? Obviously, if you keep your randomness to 0, the top lineup is always going to win. Actually, the top lineup now, lineup 4 is the lineup that wins. Right? Because it's the highest median. Right? So if you barely add any randomness, right? It's going to be closer to the median. So typically, randomness for this is not the same thing as randomness in lineup HQ. This just means how far away to the 1 standard deviation level do you want to go. So if you put it at 100% randomness, that means it'll go from 1 standard deviation plus or minus, like that. Right? Right. Doesn't mean it goes all the way to the 3 standard deviation, 4 standard deviation. Just how much inside of that 1 standard deviation, that 68% of outcomes, does it go? 100% would be the whole way of that 1 standard deviation. 50% would be halfway. 0% would be just the median, right? So you're just going like that. So it's not necessarily the same as randomness in lineup HQ. So this would be a good tool. The reason you can only do 10 is because as you add more, it's exponentially, it gets slower and slower. And that's beyond the power of pretty much to use Excel to do this. And you probably shouldn't be weighing like lineups like this unless this is like more for like single entry 3 max type of stuff than like I'm gonna weigh 150 lineups against each other. Like, dude, you don't need to do that. But maybe comparing 10 to each other, okay, maybe that's useful. A lot of times you could look and see what the ceiling projection is for these lineups versus the floor and figure that out yourself. So you don't necessarily even need the sims to do it. But we added a tool in here that if you want to compare cash lineups even, you go, I have to choose between these 3 lineups for cash games. Well, just run some sims. Just click some buttons and go, there anything that makes one stand out maybe slightly over the other? And if that makes enough of a difference to you, then it gives you an ability to make that choice. So this is all included. Let me share it. This is all included in Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. How to apply profitable DFS strategies for advanced players. Having a solid understanding of game theory concepts in daily fantasy sports can separate you from the recreational players. But how do you develop a systematic, repeatable, time-efficient process to analyze slates effectively and consistently build lineups that show a long-term profit? In this 10-chapter audio course, you will learn these expert-level methodologies and simply leveraging publicly available information and tools, such as what you could find at RotoGrinders. If you're a premium member, so click on that description, get $10 off your first month. All without requiring any formal expertise in mathematics or any experience in computer programming whatsoever. So how could you have a game theory advantage and use these tools and use the concepts from the course in order to build lineups? And you don't even need to know anything about the sport. You don't need to know anything. You get projections, you get ownership, you get all that. You're able to weed out bad lineups, right? Lineups that are duped too much, player combinations that are have too high variance factors. How do you build lineups that are plus EV? This is the methodology to build plus EV lineups that don't involve you having to run your own simulations of contests. You don't have to program in Python or R. You could be directionally correct enough. If it gets to the point that playing this way is not profitable, then probably everyone should quit because the rake eats everyone. But there's DFS, there's still an edge. It's 2022. So how do you build better lineups? Get Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players at theoryofdfs.com. As Straffes23 says, I've been doing it manually. We'll definitely purchase the advanced class with these tools. Exactly. These are efficiency tools. Will they tell you what lineup to play? No. Of course, they won't tell you what lineup to play, but they will speed up the process of you getting down to the lineups that you want to play. So that's why I showed you the correlation matrix, the portfolio trimmer, the lineup simulator. We have a duplication predictor for like the showdown and like MMA, PGA, small stuff. Also have contest reviewer, which is similar. It's like results DB. So you could import a previous contest CSV and take a look at all your opponent's lineups, what they were projected, what exposures they had, or you could look up anyone. And that's especially useful because in Results DB, you could do it here at RotoGrinders, but we only have like the featured contests. So if you play, I play the $12 single entry in MLB and they never list that, or the $40 whatever, or I play this, like, dude, all you need is the contest CSV. You plug it in, you pretty much get your own little Results DB for yourself. And then we've also have a contest history analyzer, which I always suggest just getting RotoTracker. But if you're kind of cheap and you don't play, like, if you're a single lineup type of player, like you're not going to have like thousands of rows in your contest history. So maybe you don't want to spend the couple of bucks a month for RotoTracker. You're like, okay, so we gave you something that you can analyze. You import your contest history. It'll show you your ROI per sport and give you little graphs and stuff like that. But that's more useful for people that don't play as often or only play few lineups, few entries. It's not meant for you to put in 250,000 lines and then expect it to work in Excel. It's not going to work. Okay, it's meant for smaller, under 100,000 at least, if not under 50,000. And then we also have a lineup optimizers in there, which I don't suggest. We threw that in for people that maybe don't have access to an optimizer or anything like that. It's just simple, a single lineup optimizer. You just put in your projections and it'll tell you what the optimal lineup is. The top median projected lineup. That's all it does. So like here at RotoGrinders, it's essentially this. You press that button, right? There you go. Based on the current projection, here's 140.70, right? In Excel, it takes way longer to do. Okay, let me just tell you. It takes way longer to do if you have a lot of players in your pool and everything. So I wouldn't suggest doing it in Excel, but you need something like Lineup HQ. You need projections. You need stuff like that. So sign up for RotoGrinders. If you're already signed up for RotoGrinders, you don't need to single lineup optimizer we've included with the theory of DFS. I just want to make that clear. It's not a full-fledged optimizer. It's just there for, I just want to know if I have all my projections and what the optimal lineup is. And if you could remove a row. Oh, I want to take out this guy and then run it. But like I said, there's a limit in what you could do in Excel. So it's not the best to do it in Excel. And the time it takes to do in Excel is like 50 times longer than it is to press this button in Lineup HQ. Okay? So you may be sitting there for 5 minutes while it figures it out. And you'd be like, this seems stupid to wait 5 minutes to do it. Well, that's why you sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Right? So you get a tool. You need a tool to build the lineups anyway. These tools won't build the lineups for you. You have to insert lineups. You have to insert projections. So you need projections. You need lineups. Now, obviously, you could build lineups by hand in Draftkings and then export that and use it. I mean, you can do that. But you need some type of lineup builder where you could export here and have the lineups and put them in and the projections. So this is not something to replace RotoGrinders. This is not something to replace Lineup HQ. This is something to add to it, to speed up the process. Right? Instead of getting rid of all these, I'm going to build 1,500 lineups, right? Because this only builds 300 at a time. You can build 3,000 lineups. You can build 10,000. I think James was talking to me the other day. He built out 15,000, 20,000 lineups, and he was using the tools, right? That much slower with that many lineups. But you go, okay, I'm going to build 100 of these, 300 of those, 500 of those. He's working around with like Python and stuff to generate lineups, and then still using the tools. Cut and paste these, cut and paste those, trim these, trim those, take a look at those. You can do a lot with it. So it's you're not limited to just like, I can only build 150 lineups at a time. It's like, no. For Showdown the other day, I built like 3,000 lineups. I went captain by captain, built a whole bunch of lineups, and then started trimming. Go, this one projects too low. Let me cut it off there. Let me cut this off here. Cut these lineups out. I was playing, 50 lineups or so. I got it down to like 70, and then I kind of pick and chose the last 20 to get rid of. And there you go. There were my lineups. Done. So hit that thumb button on your way out the door. Right? To me, this is a first look of going over the NFL slate. Like, well, what do you think of Fournette against the run defense of the Saints or something? Like, dude, it's already in the number. All that discussion is already in the number. So I don't care why. As long as the numbers are accurate, I could build good lineups. Right? Reasonably accurate. Right? That's why I said Nico Collins maybe is slightly overprojected. Maybe slightly. Right? Because if he's going to come in at that low ownership yeah. So that's why, like here, like Greg Dortch. Like, is he really going to have the role that he had last week? I don't know. Maybe the ownership is going to be higher, right? You bump up his ownership to 13.87%, then he may not show up in a lot of the lineups that you trim because he's 10 percentage point higher owned. So that's why, aggregating, waiting till, it's Wednesday. We don't even know. Someone gets injured on Thursday, right? Thursday's practice. Is Higgins going to play? Is this guy going to play? You don't know. So that's why, like, looking on Wednesday, like, I'm not going to just, like, save this and go like, oh, yeah, this is the way it's going to play out. But most likely, Barkley, Fournette, and the Bengals defense will be chalky. I could probably tell you that for sure. That's probably the case. But you never know. We'll see what happens later in the week. We got NFL shows all week long. All week long. We got the Soulcast later today. Even though I did take a first look, that is technically the first look podcast, the Soulcast. And we got tournament shows. I got a premium show on Fridays for NFL with Tuttle. And then, as always, baseball's still going on, right? We still got MLB. I'll be on later with Dean and Kirkwood, right? I'll be on later, MLB. Pretty much doing the same process for MLB and going, okay, this is what I think. And why do you think? I have no idea. The projections are the projections. But I'll be on Grinders Live later today, 5 o'clock Eastern, and that's followed by Crunch Time with Kevin Roth to go through right before lock, around the horn. They'll be talking about the weather updates and everything. So I'll see you later then, and I'll be back tomorrow, right? Probably still talking about NFL. Maybe we'll talk about the Chargers Chiefs showdown slate tomorrow, maybe. But I'll be here, as I always am. 11 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday, answering your DFS strategy questions, as I usually do, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.